He remembered the explosion. He remembered the ship alarm screaming as the warp drive overloaded. He remembered trying to stabilize the controls, then nothing but fire and silence. Now he was here in a place that looked nothing like his ship. His breathing grew faster. Where was he? How had he survived? The chamber was vast. Black walls rose high above him, carved with designs that looked both ancient and alien. Tall windows stretched toward the ceiling, but instead of sunlight, a strange blue glow poured in. Outside, he thought he saw stars, which meant he was no longer on Earth. He might not even be on a planet at all. A sound made him freeze. Soft footsteps echoed from the shadows beyond the crystal light. He turned quickly, heart racing. A figure stepped forward, tall and graceful, dressed in a gown that shimmered like liquid night. Her eyes glowed faint red and her skin looked pale but smooth, almost too perfect. She carried herself like a ruler who feared nothing. "You are awake," she said, her voice calm yet powerful, like music with hidden strength. Daniel tried to stand, but his legs shook. He leaned against the couch. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough. The woman's lips curved into a smile. "You are in my house, my domain, and you were dreaming quite loudly, human. You were talking about me in your sleep." She gave a soft laugh, one that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. Not from fear, but from how strange it sounded. Half amusement, half mystery. Daniel blinked. "Talking about you? I don't even know who you are." Her smile widened. She moved closer, and Daniel noticed her eyes more clearly. They were not only red. They seemed to shift like burning coals, watching him with interest. "Perhaps not with names," she said. "But your mind wandered, and in your dream you called me Queen of Shadows, Lady of Night. You whispered it while you struggled. I found it entertaining." Daniel felt his face heat. The thought of speaking in his sleep before this strange figure embarrassed him, but his fear was stronger. "Are you going to hurt me?" he asked. The woman tilted her head. "If I wished to harm you, you would not be sitting there now." "No, human. I saved you. You fell from the sky in a fireball. Your fragile craft was destroyed, yet you lived. I pulled you from the wreck before the flames consumed you." He swallowed hard. She had rescued him, but why? He studied her carefully. She was unlike any alien he had imagined. She looked almost human. Yet something about her presence felt ancient and dangerous, as if she belonged to a story told around a fire long ago. "Who are you?" he asked. She gave a small bow, not out of respect, but more like a gesture of play. "I am Queen Seraphine of the Noctari. Some have called my kind vampires. Though we are not the monsters of your myths. We are hunters of energy, not of blood. We are the night that survived when the stars tried to burn us away." Daniel stood straighter, forcing himself not to back away. "And what do you want from me?" Her laugh came again, light yet sharp. "I do not yet know. Perhaps entertainment. Perhaps knowledge. You humans are curious creatures. You carry fire in your hearts, but such weakness in your bodies. I wonder which of those defines you more." Daniel felt her words like a test, as if she wanted to see how he would react. His instinct was to show fear, but something inside him resisted. He had survived the crash. He had survived worse back on Earth during training. If this queen wanted to play games, he would not let her see him as only prey. "I may be weak compared to you," Daniel said, his voice firm, "but humans are more than fragile bodies. We build, we endure. That's why I'm alive right now." Her eyes narrowed, but instead of anger, amusement returned. "Good," she said softly. "You answer with pride. That is better than trembling like a cornered animal." She walked to a chair carved from dark stone and sat, her gown flowing like liquid shadows around her. She gestured toward him. "Tell me your name, human." "Daniel," he answered. "Daniel," she repeated as if tasting the sound. "A simple name. I will remember it." Silence stretched between them for a moment. Daniel studied the chamber again, looking for any sign of escape, but it was clear he was deep within her stronghold. The walls were too high, the doors too massive, and even if he could run, he had no idea where to go. His only chance was to understand this queen and her intentions. Finally, he asked, "Why are you telling me all this? Why save me at all if I mean so little to you?" Her gaze softened slightly, though her expression still carried power. "Because it has been many long years since I spoke with one who was not of my people. Because in your sleep you dreamed of me. And I wished to see what kind of creature would imagine the Queen of Shadows without ever knowing her. And because," she paused, her eyes flashing brighter for a moment, "because I am lonely, though I do not admit it often." Daniel felt a strange shift in his chest. This powerful queen, ruler of a place so alien and vast, had spoken the word lonely. It made her feel less like a monster and more like a person. Before he could respond, she rose again and moved closer. She leaned down slightly so her eyes met his at the same level. But do not mistake my interest for weakness, Daniel. You are alive because I chose it. Your future rests in my hands. If you wish to stay in my house, you will learn my ways. If you fail, you will not last long. Daniel forced himself to nod, though his hands clenched. Then I'll learn. But I won't kneel, not to you or anyone. For a moment the room grew still and Daniel thought he had made a mistake. Then Seraphine's lips curved into another smile, wider this time. She gave a soft laugh, almost genuine. Good. You may prove interesting after all. Daniel breathed out slowly. He was alive for now. He was in the house of a queen who called herself a vampire, who claimed she had saved him, who spoke of dreams and loneliness. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. This was not a cage of despair. This was a game, and he would have to play it carefully if he wished to survive. The morning on the alien moon was unlike anything Daniel had ever known. The blue light from the glowing crystals that filled Queen Seraphine's palace shifted slowly, creating a sense of time passing without the harshness of sun or shadow. The air carried a faint hum, almost like a quiet vibration through the floor. Daniel had been awake for hours, exploring the immediate area of the palace. Every corner he turned revealed strange devices, ancient carvings and corridors that seemed endless. Seraphine appeared suddenly, standing at the entrance to a hallway. Her long gown flowed as if alive, and her eyes glimmered with a curious light. You have wandered well, Daniel, she said, her voice calm and precise. But the palace is not merely decoration. It is a test. A place where the mind and spirit must survive. Daniel looked at her, unsure of what she meant. A test? What kind of test? She smiled, walking closer. A test of thought, of courage, of wit. You humans have something rare in the universe, curiosity. You do not surrender when faced with uncertainty. You endure even when you do not understand. That is what I wish to see in you. Daniel nodded, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. He had survived countless simulations and emergency drills on Earth, but nothing prepared him for this. And if I fail? He asked cautiously. Her smile deepened. Then you learn quickly why the stars fear those who walk in shadow. But you will not fail immediately. That is why I saved you. I am patient. I enjoy watching potential unfold. For the next few hours, Seraphine guided Daniel through a series of challenges. The first was simple in appearance, a corridor lined with floating crystals that emitted different tones when touched. Daniel had to step on them in the correct sequence to open the door at the end. At first he hesitated, but his mind adapted quickly. He listened to the soft hums, memorized the pattern, and found the correct path. Seraphine watched silently from the side, her posture regal and composed. When Daniel reached the end, she clapped softly. Good. You observe well, but observation alone is not enough. You must also understand the purpose of what you see. Next came a room filled with holographic images of galaxies, planets, and strange structures he did not recognize. Daniel walked carefully, noticing that the images changed as he moved. Some planets seemed to move faster, some slowed down, and some disappeared entirely. You must find the pattern in chaos, Seraphine explained. Most humans would panic or choose blindly. I wonder if you can perceive the order within disorder. Daniel studied the images, moving deliberately. He noted the speed of rotation and alignment. Realizing the images formed a sequence similar to a dance, he followed it, touching each projection at the right time. The room brightened, signaling his success. Seraphine's smile returned. Clever. Humans are not always strong, but you are adaptable. That is why I am interested in you. By the end of the day, Daniel felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. His body ached, but his mind was alive with discovery. He had begun to understand the palace, the strange energy of the crystals, and the careful tests Seraphine set before him. Yet the question remained, why him? Why had she chosen to save a human from a crashed ship when her kind rarely interacted with outsiders? Seraphine seemed to read his thoughts. I saved you because the universe has grown quiet, she said. My people, the Noctari, are few. We hide in shadows because others fear us. For centuries we have watched the stars from afar, and now we wait for those who might bring change. You are such a being, Daniel. Not because you are human, but because you carry the spark of endurance, curiosity, and courage. You survive where many would perish. That is rare. Daniel considered her words. He had always thought of humans as ordinary, small beings in an enormous universe. Yet here he was, recognized for qualities that seemed to matter more than strength or technology. "And if I do survive?" he asked. She tilted her head, studying him. "Then perhaps we will see if humans can teach an ancient race something we have forgotten. But survival alone is not enough. You must prove your spirit, your mind, your understanding of what it means to endure." The following days passed in a strange rhythm. Daniel awoke each day in the same crystalline chamber. Seraphine introduced him to more tests, puzzles, and challenges that required both mental skill and moral judgment. One day he had to navigate a maze filled with shifting walls and deceptive illusions. Another day, he had to repair a broken energy conduit using only limited tools. Each time he succeeded, Seraphine watched, sometimes nodding, sometimes smiling, and occasionally remaining silent, as if considering his performance carefully. During these hours, Daniel also began to learn more about Seraphine herself. She told him stories of her people, how they once ruled star systems long ago, how they had fought and lost wars against machines that sought to dominate life in the universe, and how only a few Nocturi remained to carry their legacy. She spoke not with bitterness but with memory and wisdom. "You see," she said one evening as they rested in a chamber filled with soft glowing light, "my people are not monsters. We are survivors. We have strengths and weaknesses like any other, but we hide because we fear the universe will misunderstand us. We do not seek conquest. We seek life, understanding, and the chance to endure." Daniel listened carefully. "And yet you test me. Why not simply let me leave?" She smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Because you are different. You carry the spirit that my kind has forgotten. You do not surrender easily. You do not hide in fear. You are unpredictable. That is both dangerous and intriguing." At first, Daniel had been afraid of her. Now he felt curiosity and even respect. She was powerful, ancient, and clever. Yet she seemed almost human in her desire to find something meaningful. He realized that the game she played was not meant to hurt him, but to see what humans could offer. A spark, a strategy, a courage that even the Noctari could admire. One evening, as they watched the distant stars through the tall windows, Daniel asked, "Do you ever wish things were simpler? To live without tests or strategy?" Seraphine's eyes reflected the stars. Simplicity is rare in the universe. Even humans cannot live without struggle. "And yet," she said, her voice softer now, "sometimes I wonder if I have missed something by isolating myself. By hiding my people in shadows, perhaps I have lost sight of what it truly means to endure." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then maybe I can help. Maybe humans can teach you that endurance is not just survival, but hope, and understanding and trust." She turned to him fully, studying his expression. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps you can teach me something. But remember, Daniel, the universe is not forgiving. Trust must be earned, and even then it is fragile." The days continued, each filled with new puzzles, exercises, and lessons. Daniel began to notice that he was not just learning the ways of the palace, but also the ways of Seraphine. He learned to anticipate her reactions, to understand her intentions, and to predict her decisions in the games she presented. Yet she was always one step ahead, watching him carefully, never revealing her full strategy. Through all this, Daniel realized that the strange connection he felt with Seraphine was not fear or anger, but curiosity and admiration. He saw in her a being who had endured centuries of solitude, who carried power beyond imagination, and yet sought something beyond herself. He began to understand that her laughter, her tests, and her questions were not meant to torment him, but to reveal the true measure of human spirit. By the end of the week, Daniel had passed tests that would have defeated many others. He could navigate the maze of illusions, solve the energy puzzles, and even anticipate the changes in the crystal corridor. Seraphine watched him quietly, her expression unreadable but her eyes brighter. "You are proving yourself to be more than I expected," she said one evening. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as the universe believes. Perhaps the spark of endurance is stronger than any energy I have seen. Perhaps in time I will learn much from you." Daniel felt a sense of pride. He had survived the first stage of her challenge. He had gained not only her respect but also a glimmer of trust. Yet he knew the true tests were still ahead. For Seraphine's games were only beginning, and the universe around them held challenges far greater than a palace of glowing crystals and shifting illusions. As he lay down that night, the faint hum of the palace surrounding him, Daniel realized that he was no longer a simple survivor. He was a participant in something far larger, a game of wit, courage, and understanding between a human and the vampire queen. The night felt different now, not threatening but full of possibility, and in the quiet, he could hear her voice, almost like a whisper in his dreams. "We shall see how far you can go, human. We shall see how far the spark of your kind can reach." The days in the palace passed in a rhythm Daniel had never known before. Each morning, the blue glow of the crystals guided him through corridors and halls filled with puzzles, exercises, and lessons. He had begun to understand the palace itself as a kind of living entity, responding to the movements of its queen and the presence of her guest. He grew more confident, yet he also felt the weight of mystery pressing down upon him. The more he learned, the more he realized there were layers of history he did not yet understand. One evening, Seraphine led him into a chamber different from any they had entered before. The walls were lined with enormous panels that displayed images of distant worlds, strange battles, and ships that glowed with energy unlike anything Daniel had seen. The room smelled faintly of ozone and old stone, a combination that made him feel as if he had stepped into memory itself. "This is the Hall of Ancients," Seraphine explained, her voice echoing slightly. "Here my people record our history, our triumphs, and our losses. Few humans have ever seen this." Daniel walked slowly through the hall, eyes wide as images shifted before him. He saw Nocturi ships soaring through space, their sleek black forms weaving around glowing enemy vessels. He saw scenes of war and desperation, battles that seemed almost impossible to win. And in the midst of it all, he saw the faces of Seraphine's people, strong, proud, and yet marked by the weight of survival. "Your people were powerful," Daniel said quietly, awed. "Why are there so few of you now?" Seraphine's eyes darkened, though her expression remained composed. "Many ages ago, our kind ruled the stars. We were feared for our abilities, for our endurance, for our capacity to survive where others would perish. But power draws envy and fear. We were hunted by the Machine Empire, a civilization that sought control of all life. They feared us, and in their fear they waged war. We lost much. Only a few of us survived." Daniel felt a pang of sympathy. He had seen his own species struggle against odds, but the scale here was beyond imagination. "And now you hide," he said. "You survive in the shadows." Seraphine nodded. "Yes, we hide because the universe would not understand us. Many would seek to destroy what they cannot control. My people live in isolation, guarding knowledge and power that could change the balance of stars. And yet, there is also hope. The universe is not entirely silent." Daniel was silent, considering her words. The idea that her kind had endured centuries, carrying history and knowledge that humans could hardly imagine, left him humbled. He realized that survival alone had a different meaning for the Noctari. They did not simply live. They carried the weight of their past, the memory of losses, and the wisdom of experience. "Why show me this?" he asked. Seraphine's gaze softened, though her tone remained firm. "Because you must understand the stakes. You are not merely a visitor in my palace. You are part of this moment, a thread in a tapestry that stretches across centuries. If you are to survive here, you must know not only who I am, but who we are. Humans often underestimate the past. They see only the present. You must see both." Daniel nodded slowly. He had always believed that understanding history was important, but now he felt it in a new way. The weight of memory, of legacy, and of survival pressed upon him. He felt a strange kinship with Seraphine, even though she was not human. Both of them carried burdens, though hers spanned centuries. Seraphine led him to a smaller chamber where a single crystal floated in the center. Its light pulsed gently like a heartbeat. "This crystal records the essence of my people," she said. "It holds not only memory but emotion, thought, and purpose. To touch it is to feel the weight of history." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the crystal, he felt a rush of images and feelings. He saw battles, victories, losses, and the sorrow of a people who had endured far beyond what any human could imagine. He felt their pride and their fear, their joy and their grief. It was overwhelming, yet it was also beautiful. Seraphine watched him carefully. "Do you understand now?" she asked. I think so," Daniel said, his voice trembling slightly. "You survived because you are strong, but also because you never gave up. Your people endured when others failed." She nodded. Yes, strength is important, but endurance, wisdom, and understanding are what allow life to continue. Humans have strength, but they must learn endurance in a universe that does not forgive weakness. That is why I test you. That is why I saved you. You are not merely alive. You are learning. And learning is survival too. Daniel stepped back from the crystal, feeling changed. He had always believed that survival was about physical skill and intelligence. But now he understood that endurance carried another layer. It was about understanding, about history, about the choices that had shaped life for centuries. He realized that his own species had lessons to learn from the Noctari, not just in strength, but in patience, in strategy, and in perspective. As he walked through the chamber, he noticed a series of portraits along the walls. Each depicted a leader of the Noctari, their eyes bright with determination and pride. One in particular caught his attention, a tall, regal figure whose gaze seemed to pierce through time itself. "That is my predecessor," Seraphine said quietly. "She led our people during the last Great War. Her choices saved many but cost even more. Leadership carries burden that few can understand. One day I will pass the crown and someone else must bear the weight of centuries. That is the nature of life for my kind." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that Seraphine herself carried a burden far heavier than any human could imagine. Her strength was not only in her power, but in the responsibility she bore for her people, their history, and their survival. For the next several days, Daniel continued his lessons, but now they included more than puzzles and physical challenges. Seraphine guided him through the history of her people, teaching him strategies used in battles long past, the philosophy of endurance, and the principles that allowed the Noctari to survive when others would have fallen. He began to see the palace itself not just as a home, but as a school, a library, and a laboratory of survival. One night, as they sat in a chamber that overlooked the glowing landscape outside, Daniel asked, "Do you ever regret the wars, the losses, the choices you had to make?" Seraphine was silent for a long moment, staring at the horizon. "Regret is dangerous," she said finally. "It can cloud judgment and weaken spirit. We learn from loss, but we cannot dwell on it. We endure, we remember, and we prepare. That is all we can do." Daniel considered her words carefully. He realized that this was a lesson not only for survival, but for life itself. Humans often allowed regret to define them, but the Noctari had learned to use memory as a tool, not a burden. There was wisdom in their endurance, and Daniel felt honored to witness it. Over time, he noticed a change in Seraphine. She became less distant, more willing to share her thoughts and more willing to explain the reasoning behind her tests. He also noticed moments of humor, small smiles, and the occasional laugh that was genuine, not teasing. The queen, he realized, was capable of emotion as deep and complex as any human, though expressed differently. One afternoon, as they walked along a balcony that overlooked the vast expanse of the moon's surface, Daniel asked, "Do you ever wish things were different? To live without war, without hiding, without tests?" Seraphine looked out at the horizon, her eyes reflecting the stars. "Perhaps," she said softly, "but the universe does not grant simplicity. Life is always a challenge, and yet there is value in challenge. It teaches resilience, strategy, and understanding. It shows who is capable of endurance and who is not. That is why I continue to test and why I continue to observe. The universe is harsh, but those who learn to endure become something greater than simple survivors." Daniel nodded, understanding more fully than ever before. He realized that his presence in the palace was not merely a test of skill or courage, but a chance to witness the resilience of a people who had survived beyond imagination. He felt a sense of responsibility, not only for his own survival, but for the trust Seraphine had placed in him. As night fell, Daniel lay in his chamber, reflecting on all he had learned. The palace was no longer merely a place of mystery and challenge. It was a school, a home, and a testament to the endurance of life. He understood that the tests he had faced were only the beginning, and that the true challenge would come not from puzzles or games, but from the decisions he would have to make in the days to come. And in the quiet of the night, as the crystals pulsed softly around him, Daniel felt a spark of hope. He had survived the past, he had endured the challenges of the present, and he had begun to understand the weight of history. Perhaps, he thought, humans and Noctari were not so different after all. Both carried the flame of endurance, and both sought to survive in a universe that demanded strength, courage, and wisdom. Daniel had begun to feel at home in the palace, though he never forgot that he was a guest of a being far more powerful than himself. The tests, lessons, and stories of the past had strengthened his mind and spirit. Yet despite his growing confidence, there was an undercurrent of tension he could not ignore. The palace was not merely a home or a school, it was a fortress, and he knew that others, perhaps even members of Seraphine's own people, might not welcome him. One morning, Seraphine called him to the main hall. Her expression was serious, and the air around her felt charged with a subtle energy. "There are matters that must be addressed," she said. "Not all of my people agree with my choices. Some believe I am too lenient, too trusting, even with humans. They think I weaken us by keeping you alive." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Do they mean to harm me?" he asked cautiously. Seraphine's gaze was steady. "It is possible. The Noctari are a proud and sometimes unforgiving people. I cannot control every thought or action, but I can prepare for them. That is why I need you, Daniel. Your courage, your understanding, your adaptability. They are tools we must use wisely. Will you stand with me?" Daniel nodded firmly. "I will. But tell me what I can do." She led him to a chamber filled with maps, holographic displays, and projections of the palace. "Some Noctari wish to challenge my authority. They believe that humans are weak and that I have endangered our survival by allowing one into our home. They plan an attack. I need you to help me anticipate their moves, to create strategies that will protect us without unnecessary violence." Daniel studied the displays carefully. He had learned much about strategy from human history and his training as an astronaut, where problem-solving and quick thinking were crucial. Yet this was different. He was dealing with beings who could see in darkness, move with incredible speed, and sense energy in ways humans could not. It was a challenge unlike any he had faced before. "First," Seraphine said, "we must understand their motivations. These rebels are not mindless. They value strength and survival above all. If they see weakness, they will strike. If they see cunning and preparation, they may hesitate." Daniel nodded. "We need to anticipate their moves and show them that attacking us would fail. We need traps and diversions that protect you and the palace." For hours, he and Seraphine worked together. He suggested ways to use the palace's architecture, the floating crystals, and the energy conduits as defensive mechanisms. Seraphine listened, sometimes offering adjustments, sometimes letting him take the lead. Slowly, a plan took shape, one that relied not on overwhelming force but on strategy, foresight, and clever use of the environment. As they worked, Daniel noticed something remarkable. Seraphine did not simply act as a ruler giving orders. She collaborated, tested ideas, and even challenged his assumptions. Her mind was sharp, and her experience added depth to every decision. He realized that this partnership was not just about survival. It was about trust, understanding, and the meeting of two very different ways of thinking. The day of the challenge arrived. The palace was quiet, almost eerily so, as if holding its breath. Daniel and Seraphine waited in the main hall, observing the movements of the approaching rebels through the projections. They moved swiftly, silently, confident in their own power and in their numbers. Daniel's heart pounded, but he remained focused. He had learned that fear could cloud judgment. Instead, he relied on observation, memory, and strategy. He and Seraphine enacted their plan. Crystals shifted, hallways redirected, and energy fields activated, creating illusions and barriers that confused the rebels. They moved confidently, only to find themselves caught in traps or misled by false paths. Seraphine moved gracefully among them, confronting those who pressed forward with controlled power. Her strikes were precise, her energy controlled, and her presence overwhelming. Yet Daniel noticed that she never sought to harm unnecessarily. She guided, blocked, and diverted, using skill rather than violence. Despite their careful planning, a group of rebels managed to corner Seraphine in one of the upper chambers. Daniel did not hesitate. He rushed forward, placing himself between her and the attackers. Using his knowledge of the palace and the energy conduits, he activated a defensive mechanism that created a barrier of light and energy, forcing the rebels to retreat. Seraphine's eyes widened briefly, not in fear but in surprise. "You risked yourself for me," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of astonishment and admiration. Daniel nodded, breathing heavily. "I am not just here to survive. I am here because I choose to stand with you." The rebels retreated, regrouping in the shadows, unsure of how to proceed against a partnership they could not predict. Seraphine turned to Daniel fully, her expression softening. You have proven something remarkable, Daniel. Not only to me, but to my people. Courage, ingenuity, and loyalty. Qualities I have not seen in centuries. Perhaps humans are more capable than we believed. Daniel felt a surge of pride, not for himself alone, but for the connection he had built with Seraphine. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and through strategy, quick thinking, and trust, they had emerged stronger together. After the confrontation, Seraphine called a council of her people. Daniel watched as she addressed the Noctari, her voice commanding yet filled with reason. "This human has not endangered us," she said. "He has proven courage, intelligence, and loyalty. We survive not by strength alone, but by understanding, adaptation, and unity. Let this be a lesson to all who doubt the value of trust." The council members listened, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Slowly, the tension in the room eased. Daniel realized that their perception of him, and perhaps of humans in general, was beginning to change. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not from victory, but from having earned respect and trust in a place where it was rare and precious. That night, Seraphine and Daniel stood together on a balcony overlooking the palace. The blue glow of the crystals reflected in their eyes, creating a sense of calm after the day's storm. "You have done well," Seraphine said softly. "Not many would have acted as you did. You did not simply react. You thought, you planned, and you protected. That is true strength, Daniel." Daniel smiled faintly. "I could not have done it without your guidance. And I could not stand by and watch you face danger alone." Seraphine's gaze softened. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as the universe believes. Perhaps endurance, courage, and understanding are qualities worth preserving across worlds. You have reminded me of something important, something my people may have forgotten." Daniel looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of possibility. The palace, once a place of mystery and challenge, now felt like a symbol of cooperation, trust, and shared purpose. He realized that survival was no longer merely about endurance. It was about connection, strategy, and the willingness to stand together in the face of uncertainty. The night passed quietly, with the palace settling into a calm rhythm. Daniel lay in his chamber, reflecting on the events of the day. The challenge had been greater than any he had faced before, yet he had learned that fear could be overcome with thought, courage, and cooperation. He understood that the bond he had formed with Seraphine was more than survival. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. As he drifted into sleep, Daniel felt a sense of readiness for whatever came next. The palace, the queen, and the universe itself were vast and unpredictable, yet he knew that together, they could face whatever challenges awaited. And in the quiet, he could hear Seraphine's voice, a gentle reminder of the lessons he had learned. Endurance is not simply survival. It is courage, understanding, and the choice to act when it matters most. For the first time, Daniel felt that he was not merely surviving. He was learning, growing, and becoming a part of something greater than himself. The palace no longer felt like a cage, but a place where strength, spirit, and understanding could flourish. And with that realization, he understood that the true challenge had only just begun. The palace was unusually quiet the next morning. Daniel had expected another test, another challenge, yet the corridors seemed still, as if the very walls were holding their breath. He walked carefully, aware that in the palace of the Vampire Queen, appearances could be deceiving. Every crystal, every shadow could conceal secrets or dangers. Seraphine met him in the main hall. Her expression was calm, but her eyes carried a weight that made Daniel's stomach tighten. "There is something you must know," she said. "The rebels have not disappeared. They have retreated, but they are planning again. They are stronger than before, and they are determined to challenge my authority." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had grown stronger, learned much, and survived challenges that would have defeated many. Yet he understood that this moment would test everything he had learned, the lessons of the past, the strategies of the present, and the trust he had built with Seraphine. "Then we prepare," he said firmly. "We cannot let them catch us unready. Together we can protect the palace and your people." Seraphine's lips curved into a small smile. "Good. You understand more than I first thought. Preparation is strength, but courage is equally important. You must be ready to act when the moment comes." For the next several hours they worked together, refining the defenses of the palace. Daniel used his knowledge of human ingenuity, and combined it with Seraphine's mastery of her people's technology and energy systems. They reinforced barriers, set diversions, and created illusions to mislead any who might attack. As they worked, Daniel began to see the palace not as a fortress, but as a living being, responding to their plans. The crystals shifted subtly to amplify energy where needed. Corridors rearranged slightly to confuse intruders, and the very air seemed to carry information about movement and presence. It was as if the palace itself were aware of their intentions and willing to cooperate. Finally, the moment arrived. Shadows moved along the perimeter of the palace. The rebels had returned, confident, fierce, and unaware of the traps that awaited them. Daniel and Seraphine stood together in the main hall, ready to face the challenge. The attack began with speed and precision. The rebels moved through the corridors, relying on their strength and their understanding of the palace. Yet Daniel and Seraphine were prepared. Crystals shifted, walls redirected, and energy barriers activated, confusing and slowing the intruders. Daniel moved swiftly, anticipating each step of the rebels, guiding Seraphine to points where her power could be most effective. She moved with grace and precision, striking not to harm unnecessarily but to redirect, protect, and control. The rebels, despite their strength and skill, found themselves trapped in a game they could not fully understand. One group attempted to isolate Seraphine, moving quickly toward the chamber where she had instructed Daniel to meet her. Daniel reacted instantly, positioning himself between them. Using the energy conduits and the palace's shifting architecture, he created a barrier of light and sound that forced the rebels to retreat. His heart pounded, but he remained focused. Every move was deliberate, every decision critical. Seraphine watched him with admiration, her eyes reflecting both surprise and pride. "You act with courage, yet with wisdom," she said. "Few could do what you have done. Few would risk themselves for another, especially one so different from themselves." Daniel felt a surge of determination. "I am not here to survive alone. I stand because I choose to protect you and your people." The rebels regrouped, but their confidence had waned. They had expected to face a weakened queen, a palace vulnerable to attack. Instead, they faced strategy, intelligence, and courage. Slowly, they realized that their plan had failed. The human was not weak, and the queen was not alone. After hours of careful maneuvering, the rebels retreated. Their numbers thinned, their confidence shaken, and their resolve tested. Daniel and Seraphine watched as they disappeared into the shadows, knowing that the immediate threat had passed. The palace was safe, and the queen's authority had been reinforced. Seraphine turned to Daniel, her expression softer now. "You have proven yourself, Daniel, not only to me, but to my people. Your courage, your ingenuity, and your loyalty are qualities I have not seen in centuries. Perhaps humans carry sparks that even we, the Noctari, have forgotten." Daniel smiled faintly, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment. "I only did what I thought was right. I wanted to help and I wanted to survive, but I also wanted to stand with you." Seraphine's gaze lingered on him, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and something that resembled warmth. "In your sleep you called me a monster. Now you stand awake and call me a friend. That is a rare thing, Daniel. Few have ever crossed the boundaries between species, fear, and understanding as you have." The palace, once a place of mystery and challenge, now felt alive with possibility. The corridors, the crystals, and the energy system seemed to hum in approval, as if acknowledging the partnership that had formed. Daniel understood that survival was no longer just a matter of enduring challenges. It was about trust, connection, and understanding, lessons that he had learned through courage, strategy, and respect. In the days that followed, Daniel worked with Seraphine to strengthen the bonds between humans and Noctari. He shared stories of human resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity. The queen listened carefully, absorbing knowledge and wisdom that complemented her own understanding. Slowly, the remaining Noctari began to see that humans were not weak, but capable of endurance, courage, and creativity. Seraphine's authority was reinforced, not through fear, but through respect and collaboration. Daniel had become more than a guest. He was a partner, a student, and a teacher in his own way. The palace, once a place of isolation and shadow, had become a symbol of hope, understanding, and potential. One evening, as Daniel and Seraphine stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing landscape outside, the first light of the alien dawn spread across the horizon. The crystals in the palace reflected the soft glow, casting a gentle light that seemed to celebrate the end of conflict and the beginning of trust. "You have taught me much," Seraphine said softly, "not only about humans but about what it means to endure, to protect, and to trust. Perhaps together we can build something that lasts beyond fear and shadow." Daniel looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of fulfillment. "We can. We have the chance to learn from each other, to grow stronger together. Survival is more than enduring. It is about understanding, courage, and connection." Seraphine nodded, her eyes reflecting the first rays of dawn. "The universe is vast and full of challenges, yet together we have shown that even the most different beings can find understanding and strength." "You have reminded me of something important, Daniel. Humans are not simply fragile creatures. They carry a spark that can shine even in the darkest of places." Daniel smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. The palace, the queen, and her people were no longer symbols of fear or mystery. They were a testament to the power of courage, intelligence, and trust. The challenges they had faced were not only obstacles, but lessons that had strengthened them both. As the sun rose over the alien landscape, Daniel realized that he had not only survived the tests of the palace but had grown through them. He had learned the value of strategy, patience, and understanding. He had faced danger, uncertainty, and the unknown, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. Seraphine placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement. "The days ahead will bring new challenges, Daniel. But we are ready. Together we have proven that endurance, courage, and trust can overcome even the most difficult trials. And perhaps through our actions we can show the universe that understanding and cooperation are as powerful as any weapon." Daniel nodded, feeling a sense of purpose. He had come to this place by accident, by chance, yet he had found something greater than survival. He had found a partnership, a friendship, and a connection that transcended species and experience. The palace, the queen, and her people were no longer obstacles, but allies in a universe that demanded courage, intelligence, and endurance. As the first full light of the alien day spread across the horizon, Daniel and Seraphine stood side by side, looking out at the vast expanse before them. The palace, glowing softly in the dawn, seemed to pulse with life, acknowledging the bond that had formed between human and vampire queen. The challenges of the universe were far from over, but together they would face them with courage, wisdom, and trust. And in that moment, Daniel understood the true meaning of endurance. It was not merely surviving challenges or outlasting dangers. It was about learning, growing, and standing together with those who were different from oneself. It was about hope, understanding, and the choice to act with courage when it mattered most. The dawn had arrived, and with it, a new chapter for both humans and Noctari. Together they would face the future, not as predator and prey, but as allies, partners, and friends. And Daniel knew, as he looked at Seraphine, that this was only the beginning of a story that would be remembered for generations to come. The palace shimmered in the light of the rising sun, a symbol of hope, trust, and the enduring strength of those who dared to stand together. Daniel had survived not just through skill or luck, but through courage, intelligence, and understand.